Hear, O Israel, the great I am is the only power for you. The great I am is one. Speak peace on this seventh day of rest. Rise, O Israel. Welcome to Word War 3. Today's reference will be the Psalms of King David. A Psalm of King David, chapter 68, verse 30 in particular. And this message will be entitled Military or Psychological Warfare, PSYOPS. Now, psychological warfare or military information support operations or psychological operations have been placed upon black people for century after century, for the entire time that the quote-unquote Negro was under the direct terrorism and tutelage of colonialism. And it has gone since colonial days, even into today. This psychological warfare has been against black people. And you visiting Indigenous Hebrew Israelite Awakening, your visit here, you're going to realize how this is happening. Now, picture in your mind, the eldest child we'll call white people. The eldest child is about 500 plus years old. The neglected middle child we'll call black people. And that child is probably about 250 plus or minus years old. And finally, all other races in the United States we'll call the young child. And that child is probably about, let's say, 110 or so years old. So you have the eldest child, where you find the eldest child, he owns the water companies, the electric companies, and all these companies that are pertaining to resources, land and resources and material. And then you have the neglected child, which is, a former slave who's searching for civil rights rather than human rights. And then you have the youngest child, who can come in through integration, nationalization, and all these other means and be able to secure human rights automatically. And now, in this PSYOPs that has been going on for centuries, even today, the FBI has determined that black identity is a foreign policy. It's foreign policy to the United States. The FBI has determined that black identity is a foreign policy, and that they're going to look at black people who are trying to identify themselves as a foreign policy. That has been determined by the FBI. Now, in PSYOPs, what they need is a credible truth. A credible truth must be presented to win the hearts and minds of the population. That's what PSYOPs is. They'll take a truth, or I'll say they'll take a lie and sandwich it in some type of truth. One credible truth, so that the people or the civilization, the population will believe, oh yeah, these are truths, but they don't know that there's lies hidden in between it. Going back in history, in 1871, the House of Representatives seized recognition of individual tribes within the United States as independent nations or independent sovereign nations, which the United States was making treaties with. So after 100 years or so, a history of making treaties with the indigenous populations they now call Native Americans, they stopped making those types of treaties. Why? Because, again, the United States is a racist country. I'm sorry to tell you, Miss Nikki Haley, former UN ambassador, but yes, the United States is a racist country. And again, all this was done by good Christians. The colonial term for white people. good Christians did all this craziness. Good Christians. Now, the Indian Claims Act of 1946 was all about monetary compensation and the loss of territory that the Indians, they lost their territory. So the Indians were like the Native Americans, so to say. They were like, well, hey, we lost time, energy, land, and effort on our human rights, and you guys need to give something back. So the Indian Claims Act of the United States Indian Commission said, okay, here's this monetary compensation. Here's this restitution. Move along down the line in history. You have, again, in the same year, the Rescission Act, or the Revocation Act of 1946, and that's 38 USC subsection 107. And it is also a public law 79-391. And it was to stop the restoration of the Filipinos. Now, again, the Filipinos were a part of the United States territory list back before 1946. And they were receiving funds from the United States. And the United States said, oh, wait a minute. These guys are organized guerrillas. Again, they were not a part of the active army, but they were organized guerrilla warfare participants. So the United States decided, okay, well, we're going to stop restitution. We're going to stop monetary funds going into the Philippines. So again, if they have this act, there's this Revocation Act of 1946, that means that they were receiving funds from the United States to, prepare and correct, the wrongs of the past. Moving along in history, we have the Civil Liberties Act of 1988. Now, civil means, civilization, the population of civilization. Civilization, again, and you got Civil Liberties Act. The liberties is not a freedom. Liberty is, hey, you can go outside the ship and then you have to come right back in. So civil liberties, and this is the wordplay on this Civil Liberties Act. Civil liberties are civilians who have the freedom to go out and do whatever they want to do and then come back in. So this Civil Liberties Act of 1988, signed by the United States President who called himself Ronald Reagan, gave $20,000 plus or minus to the Japanese people who were affected by the World War II. And they were sent to concentration camps here in the United States on the West Coast. So they were compensated. These people, addressed and redressed the government on, their loss of land, property, funds, and all that other stuff. So they were, they redressed the government. And again, going back in history again, you have the Dawes Act of 1887. And this Dawes Act has not been overturned. Again, these are good Christians using the government to strip away not only land and resources, but the actual identity of people. Stripping away the identity of melanated people. And when the colonials found these melanated people here in Americas, it wasn't just the more Asiatic looking type people. We have found out that there are in their first records, they were drawing black, woolly-haired Indians. In all their first contact records, you'll see that there were black, woolly-haired people. And you also find that, the majority of the West Coast people, and here's where you get the idea of West Indian. The majority of the West Coast Indians, the California Indians, the Indians in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, all of these Western Indians were taken up and sent to Haiti. Do y'all understand that? These West Indians from the western regions of the United States were taken up and sent to the Caribbeans. This is on record, folks. And that's why they're called West Indians today. Let's keep going. Again, the Dawes Act. And this Dawes Act, what it did, again, it stripped the identity of melanated Indians. You also have, following that, you have the Curtis Act of 1898. And again, these are public laws and statutes at large. And what they're doing is they're saying, okay, we're taking the land from underneath the people that it belongs to. And they're putting civil rights and civil laws on the land and resources and pushing away the human rights of those people who actually belong there. Now, again, you have these laws put in place to, refund or repair or, give reparations to the people that it actually belonged to. And you have this middle child who is being totally neglected. You have this middle child we call Black Americans who are looking at the older brother who is in charge of everything. The older brother owns the water company, can turn that water off at moment's notice. Oh, you ain't paying your bills? Okay, we're going to turn this water source off. And you have the younger brother, the black people, which is the middle sibling, is looking at the younger brothers and sisters, the younger child, where they got businesses in their communities. They can come in and create a business just like that. Black people are watching that. Just recently, just this Friday, September of 2020, just this past Friday, your orange president, he calls himself the 45th president of the United States. He just said that he was going to pay $13 billion to an island that he didn't even know he was in control of back in 2017. He just said that he's going to pay Puerto Rico $13 billion, which is well deserved. They deserve that money. They deserve it. But we as middle children are constantly told to overlook our own plight. We're told to overlook our own human rights and look at the broad picture of everybody else being well taken care of. We're told to overlook our own human rights for integration, which I believe personally is one of the most evil, wicked things PSYOPs can do to black people, or those called black people. The International Revenue Service, the IRS, is sending out economic impact payments. Our IRS Form 144 Alpha, or the coronavirus aid relief. Do you know that evolution is a United States science, or the United States backs this science called evolution? It's a science that says, people are supposed to get better in time. But we seeing that this coronavirus, this common cold, this pneumonia is killing people. How is that evolution? How is that people getting better? You let a scientist explain that to you. But again, the IRS is sending out restitution. The IRS is sending out economic impact payments because of this disease. Where is money coming from? And again, black people are right in the middle of all this, seeing that the younger children is getting this money. Again, various Indian land grants funding, individual sovereign rights, these things are being offered to Indians, and it's well deserved. It's well deserved. Right now, the United States has an Army earplug lawsuit going on. It's well deserved to those veterans who have lost their hearing, while they were in the military. The United States has this lawsuit going on with Agent Orange, the Vietnam veterans. It's well deserved because those veterans went and sacrificed their lives, their livelihood, for the protection of the United States, as they were told to go and protect the citizens of the United States, as they were told. It's well deserved. This money is still constantly being pushed out. On a side note, I want to say that there's this royal person in Spain. His name is Felipe Juan Pablo Alfonso de Todos los Santos de Borbón y Grecia, or Felipe VI of Spain. He's the king of Spain. And his title, whether it's ceremonial or not, his title is King of Jerusalem. His title is King of the West Indies. I need y'all to know that he has a title over independent nations today. And these independent nations have already received war reparations, or a right to remedy and reparation, as being victims. Now, the International Court of Justice, and that's the end of my side note. My side note is ended right there. The King of Spain is ceremonial ruler over, these nations, these other nations. Now, the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, the president right now, his name is Chile Ibo Osuchi, if that's properly pronounced, and he's of Nigeria. Now, this is a Igbo, you Hebrew Israelites out there. This is a Igbo, a Hebrew, that is in charge of the International Court of Justice right now, today. While many of you sending your letters to an orange president for civil rights, there's an International Court of Justice who listens to human rights. There's a United Nations that listens to human rights. And both of these courts, these assemblies, they have found the United States guilty of human rights violations. But yet y'all still want to go back to this civil court system that is purely racist, that looks over you middle children. Again, the United States has been found in violation of its Declaration of 1946, Article 36, Paragraph 2 and 5 of the ICJ statute. They have been found in violation of it. But yet many of you, even you white Americans, you elder children, and some of you younger children of the United States, you're still looking at the United States as this most holy thing when they have been found in violation several times. Now, I'm going to leave the links below so that you guys can check it out for yourselves. And to leave you guys on that note, King David in the Bible demands reparations for the children of Israel, you Afro-Asiatics who were scattered in Africa and later to be sold as chattel slaves in the Americas. You know, good Christians, they overlook this verse I'm going to show you. It's called Psalm 68, verse 30. And he says that his children will be praising in Africa, in Ethiopia. His children will be praising. Rebuke the company. This is Psalm 68, verse 30. Rebuke the company of spearmen, the multitude of bulls. Let me say that again. Rebuke the company of spearmen, the multitude of bulls, with the calves of the people. To everyone submit himself with a piece of silver. Scatter thou the people that delight in war. This is a prophecy. And this is also a demand of reparations for his people who were in Africa. I am a Hebrew Israelite, a conscientious objector, which means a human rights activist. And I'm also an administrator and minister of peace. Hebrew Israelite out.